The chain on my Suzuki SV650 has been coming a little bit loose lately, so I discovered that I had another chain in the garage. It's in better shape than the one that I've got, and to save a couple bucks and get the thing going for the time being, we're going to go ahead and replace the chain. So we're going to have a look today and see how this chain works. Down here on the floor, we've got the chain itself. Okay, naturally this is the chain that's going to go on the bike. I'm going to have to cut a couple of links out of it, so we're going to show how that looks, because it's about 2 links too long. Of course, you can remove links, but putting links back together is kind of a pain in the butt, so we're not going to do that. Then you have these 3 pieces over here. This is what composes of the master link. Here's the link itself. Okay, here's the backing plate that closes that link. And then this is the lock that goes on the back of it that holds that link together. And then, of course, that's what holds these 2 ends. So we're going to cut a couple of links out of that, and we're going to show you how that works. Now, as I said, my chain is about 2 links too long. So we're going to cut it right out of here, and we're going to knock off this whole section of chain to make the chain shorter so that it works for my Suzuki SV650. Now, what I have here is a chain breaker. And what this chain breaker does is it goes ahead and pushes these pins out, and then these links will separate from the rest of the chain. It's pretty interesting how it works. I never used one before. As a kid, I always just took a screwdriver or something and laid the chain down on the crack in the pavement, and with a hammer, I hammered that sucker right through. Once it fell apart, it was easy to knock the rest of it apart, but the proper way to do it is with a chain breaker. If you don't have a chain breaker, another way to do it is to go ahead and grind down that pin. And what will happen is it'll fall out. And then you'll be able to lift this link right off and push the pin through. But we're going to do it the proper way with the chain breaker today. So check this out. Okay, the chain, when inserted in the chain breaker, aligns with one of those pins. And it's a little hard to see, but inside of there, the pin, that's really badly out of focus, but inside of there you can see the pin just barely showing. And it's held in the jaws of the chain breaker like so. Now what happens is the handle here is what you hold in your hand, and then this part, the crank, you go ahead and you crank this thing on down, and this is really hard to do with one hand, but you're going to turn this. And as you turn this, it's threaded in here, and it pushes the pin right on through that chain. So we're going to go ahead and tighten that on down. And as you can see, that pin is getting pushed right through. Pop! There it goes. It just came out the other side. And loosen this now, and then lift it right off, like so. And then that chain is now ready to come apart. Alright, this one didn't want to come apart so easily, so we went ahead and used a pair of pliers to lift that link up. And then we swung it over that way. And because of that, and how much I've beaten it up, this link came off. And all this junk is going to come right out of here. And you want to be careful that you don't start losing some pieces. There's a little roller that's in between there, and you don't want to have that fall out. You want to hang on to that, because our master link is going to go through that roller like so. So it's really important that you save that piece and you don't lose it. But we're going to come back to that in just a second. But this garbage, you can just get rid of that. We're not going to use any of it, so say goodbye. Now when you go to put the chain on your bike, you're going to want to make sure that the wheel through this axle here is as far forward as you can get it, because that's going to make a lot of slack in that chain when you wrap it around this sprocket up to the front sprocket that's up here. So it's going to run along the swing arm, up and over this, under the swing arm, down below under here, and then up around that sprocket again. And you want to make sure it's nice and loose, otherwise when you go to put it on, you won't be able to get those 2 links, that master link that we looked at earlier, to close. And that's going to be rather important, because if it doesn't reach, which means your chain is too short, you're going to have to move this further forward. So make sure that your wheel is adjusted properly. So loosen your tensioners up in the back, make sure your axle is nice and loose, and then pull the whole thing forward. So once you got that set, then you can start wrapping your chain up. We've got that chain wrapped around the sprocket. It's going all the way up around here. to the front sprocket, wrapped around it, going back over the top of the swing arm, through the chain guard, and back over the top of that sprocket. Now right here is where we're going to be putting that master link through, and that's this part. So we're going to take that link and we're going to put it in from the back side. And it's a lot easier if you do this on the sprocket. And the reason for that is it stops the chain from whipping around, it stops it from coming loose. And if you got that wheel far enough forward, there'll be enough slack that you won't have any problem bringing these two together. So now what you're going to do is you're going to put that link right in through the back. And we're going to try to do this while holding the camera. But it's got to go right through the back just like so. There we go. Perfect fit. Now we got to take the front plate, or backing plate as I was calling it earlier, and you want to go ahead and put it right onto the front of that link. Okay? Now it might look like we're done, but there's one thing really important that we're missing. As you see, if we go around a block with this thing on there like that, that's going to pop off, that link's going to go through, this whole chain is going to whip off, and it's going to come right up here, and it's going to bust my clutch push rod. And that is a couple hours to replace because you got to pull the whole stupid motor apart when that little shaft busts in there. Ask me how I know. It's one of those situations that I've experienced, and it's not very fun. So definitely make sure that your chain is locked appropriately with the lock. This little guy right here. Now when the lock goes on, you always want to face the open end in the opposite direction that the chain is turning. Now the chain will turn this way, and looking at the front of this sprocket, it's going to be counterclockwise. Now this is typical on a bike that has a sprocket on the left side. If your sprocket is on the right side, then it's going to turn the opposite way, and then you're going to want that little lock turn around the other way. But in our case, where it turns counterclockwise, where the sprocket is on the left side of the bike, you want the lock to go on this way. And the reason for that is when that chain is turning, it's going to force the lock on. But anyway, they go on pretty easily. You want to make sure you've got goggles on because these things will spring and jump all over the place. Now the links look exactly the same, whether it be a bicycle, whether it be a sport bike, a dirt bike, or whatever you got. I like to get it lined up just like that. And then real simply, if you got a set of needle nose pliers, you could just squeeze it right on. Next step we got to do, because we can't jump right on it and start riding it, and that's rather important because look at how loose this thing is. Oh no! We got to go ahead and tighten up the chain tensioners, which are right back here. Now some bikes have different styles. Some bikes have a nut that you turn on the front here. Some bikes have a block that literally sits in the swing arm. But on the back side of this SV swing arm tensioner here, there's a little bolt. And that little bolt has a Allen key head on it, and I really hate Allen keys, and one of my buddies laughs at me for this, but what I have is I have a proper Allen key ratchet socket, and then you want to start turning this little sucker, if we can get it in there while holding the camera, until that chain, as you're going to watch, starting to get tighter. Now it's very important that you get that chain so that it's snug, and the second most important thing is not only the chain is snug, and that looks pretty good, but you want to make sure that the wheel is straight. And that's very important, because if you put the wheel on crooked, the bike is going to handle kind of funny. It's going to want to drive kind of crooked down the road, and that's not good. The second problem that you have is your chain alignment if that wheel is crooked. Looking at it, you see how that chain is bowed a little bit off to the right there? So what we want to do is we want to come over to the right side, and we want to tighten this guy up. And once we tighten him, the wheel is going to snug, and that chain is going to get really tight. Now every service manual calls for a different amount of chain tension, but I like to do it by feel. You get a pretty good idea as to what the chain's going to look like and about how snug you are. In this case, it's really tight now, so you don't want to go with that. So we're going to loosen it up a little bit more on this side. And you go back and forth until you get a happy medium, where you make sure that your chain is straight, and that your wheel is straight, and that chain isn't overly tightened. We're still looking at a little bit of a tightness back here. So we're going to keep playing with this a little bit until we get it like it should be. We've got that chain aligned, and if you look on down this way, you can see that the chain looks nice and straight, just like that. And if you get down nice and low, you can tell that it looks straight. Now it might look a little crooked or something from the lighting here, but it's actually dead on from how I'm looking at it. Now the next step you got to do is make sure that your tensioners are nice and tight, that they're not falling off. It's probably more important that the left side be this way, because that's the side with the sprocket. Now if on the other side without the sprocket, right over here, this guy can sometimes have a little play in it, but this one's actually snugged up nice and good. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to tighten up the axle. That's this guy here. And of course the nut on the other side. Okay, we're all tight now on the axle bolt right here. Now as you can see, the light is coming through that little hole. And what that is, that's the hole where the cotter pin goes through. And we went ahead and we got a pin in here, so the pin is bent over that way. It's gone through that hole. So it's going to hold this nut on in case it should come unscrewed. So that's held on there nice and tight. You want to take this chain and you want to clean it. It's kind of dirty because it was on the floor. That's going to get some crap on it. And you want to give that thing a good wipe down. Now watch your fingers. You don't want to catch your finger in here. There was one guy in the Jixer forums late last year that caught all 4 of his fingers in here, and they were all cut off from the first knuckle. So you don't want to do that. Everybody be calling you stupid. So definitely don't put your fingers in here while this thing is turning. Some chain lube, and you don't need a heck of a lot. Well, alright, we got our chain on. We're going to go ahead and take him for a ride. Always put your helmet on before you go for a ride. If you don't wear any other gear, at least wear your helmet. Don't be a stupid moron or I will laugh at you.